Good afternoon. I'm Khaki Walton. Checking on the Arts is made possible by contributing listeners and the Pink Palace Museum. The Annesdale Park Gallery presents Transitory, Triad, Harmonic Alliance, an exhibit curated by Ken Hall featuring works by Olga King, Kristen Rambo, and Robert King. That exhibit opens 1 week from this Friday, January the 20th, and will be on view through February the 14th, with an artist reception Friday, January 20th from 6 to 8 p.m., and a portion of proceeds from sales of art benefit church health. David Hasty is the owner of the Annesdale Park Gallery. He joins me in the studio this afternoon, along with Robert King and Ken Hall. Nice to have you all here. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having us.
Well, David, let me start with you. This is a great idea because the Church Health Center is your neighbor, right down the street. And so this is the first time that you've done this, actually.
No, we did it last
did you?
February.
Okay.
We had another exhibit, and a couple of things that I would really like to say. Number one, I apologize. I will not be there. I'm having knee surgery next Thursday.
Oh.
But I really want to put in a plug for supporting, various things. Artists, for one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, gee whiz, we need artists to be able to do their work. And the ones that are trying to do this full time are really need our support. And the ones that aren't doing it full time, they have a job that helps them pay their rent. They don't have nearly as much time as they might have to, develop new things, explore new areas, perfect, or at least improve the things that they've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
So they need support. And one of the things that I have loved about this job is writing checks to artists. My sister, I'm the artist in this little vignette is going to remain anonymous, but I'll go ahead and instead of saying this lady, it was my sister, said, please tell so-and-so whose show is coming up, I love, love, love her work. And so I passed that along, and the artist said, well, I really appreciate that, but nothing says love like a credit card number. And that's a little crass, but it's true.
Mm-hmm, that's true.
The other thing I would like to suggest that people might think of supporting is art galleries. That's a very important part of the process. Now, it doesn't matter whether mine stays or goes, and specifically, but art galleries need support too. There's more expenses than people would think of for this.
Right.
But then to top it off, the most important thing, well, no, the artists are probably the most important thing. But the Church Health Center is a jewel here in town and does an incredible amount of wonderful work. Yes, they have been a neighbor on Peabody, and they're moving to Crosstown Concourse very soon. But I'll still support them. Well, even though they're leaving us on Peabody, I'm still going to send some money into them.
Well, and artists depend on them too. Artists who make
a lot of them that don't have adequate health insurance.
Sure. So they've done a lot for the artistic community, the musicians in this area, and folks who just normally can't afford to go to a doctor. The Church Health Center's there.
Yeah, a portion of the sales of this these three artists in this exhibit is going to go to the Church Health Center. But anything else that anybody buys is the fraction of that's going to go to
the artist. Well, let's turn it to Ken. If you want to move the mic over to Ken Hall, who curated the exhibit that we're talking about today, Transitory, Triad, Harmonic Alliance. So you brought these three artists together. Tell us how you managed to get the three of them to put on an exhibit.
Well, I'm not exactly homeless, but I'm Wallace. So every now and then someone will let me use their space. Last year I did a show with David, a couple at Crosstown, a couple over at Transitory. So I'm always thinking ahead. When next I get a wall, what would I like? And I've worked with Olga before. I love her work. She has really been developing. She's, of course, known for her jewelry, but she's been painting for some time. Mm-hmm. And I talked her last year into doing her very first show.
Oh, that was at Crosstown, right?
It was, and she was very nervous, but it was a tremendous success. We sold a lot. So, David, we have the affirmation of the credit card numbers. I did a show last year with Kristen at Transitory, and she's 23-ish and new, but I think an enormous talent. And Olga was kind enough to connect me with Robert. And I said, gosh, here's a trio, or a triad, as our musical friends would say. Every beat and every measure is different. It's different chords, and they're just a fleeting moment of this harmony. So this is our harmony that will be on display at Annesdale for a few weeks. I think the artist's work is complementary, very distinct, of course, but will complement each other and look great in David's gallery. So thank you, David, for hosting, and especially for allowing a portion of the proceeds to go to Church Health.
Well, I want to turn to Robert King now, and that name is probably familiar to a lot of you. You grew up in Memphis, and back in 2009, a documentary about you was shown at the Indie Memphis Film Festival, shooting Robert King, because you've been a photojournalist for over 15 years, right?
Yep, closer to 25.
Closer to 25 now? You've been in war zones all over the world, but you started out going to art school. Was that here in Memphis, or was that in New York?
I was in Brooklyn, New York, at Pratt Institute.
At the Pratt Institute. So what was your focus when you were in art school?
Multimedia, with the major in photography and a minor in filmmaking and video, film and video.
So,
and paint. But it had a Bauhaus foundation, so the first year you were learning three-dimensional design, light and color, drawing, painting, and then as you progressed through the program, you could take on added electives of painting and other creative classes.
So what led you, you're in art school, and all of a sudden you decide to pack up and go to Sarajevo. What led you to make that big leap?
I'd won a grant from the university, a travel grant, to go back to the Zagros Mountains in northern Iraq, but the borders changed, and I just happened to run into a friend of mine, but at the time he's just kind of someone you had heard about, and we spoke, and he got me to contact a photo agent in Manhattan who was willing to accredit me to go into Sarajevo. So it just kind of happened. Some guy said, hey, why don't you come visit us or do a story here? It was a very analog time.
Yeah.
It was in the 93.
Right. So once you that was, you sort of ended up, I guess it almost happened organically or something, that all of a sudden you're covering the things that are happening in Sarajevo, and from there you go to, my goodness, you were Chechnya, Iraq, Afghanistan. You did a lot of work in Syria too, and I mean, I marvel at people like you, and I interviewed Tim Hetherington at one point too.
Really?
Yeah.
He's a friend of mine.
Yeah, I interviewed him about Restrepo, the documentary that he and Sebastian Younger. But it amazes me that you so fearlessly go places that most people wouldn't want to go, to cover, to let the world know what's happening in war zones all over the world. I mean, is that something that you always had in you, that a burning passion to cover things in the world, to let people know what's happening?
You wanted to be, I don't know, there are a lot of, we try to justify what we do, so there are no revisionists in history. And then a lot of times it becomes more personal, with Mary Colvin in Syria and Remy Oshlik. So you try to, keep it in perspective. But, it is our business, and so it can be dangerous at times.
Well, you've endured some harrowing experiences, and finally now you're sort of settled in one place for a little bit. You're working in Berlin now, and working for a major magazine in their film and stuff on the internet, Bild. Let me ask you about picking up a paintbrush again, because I know that's been a nice change for you, and something that's been therapeutic, I'm sure.
It's been good. It's been really productive. So most of the times I take the body of work I've built up is in Berlin, where I'm working, and so I would spend most of my free time and holidays in various bars and just city life. And so I draw with it's watercolor, and a lot of times I'm using ice cubes to wet the the pigment, and then I'm able to also address things from my previous job, where you had kind of no image control. So in journalism, the image in many ways controls the image maker, because we're documenting and framing these events that are happening in front of us. But sometimes, you have to take control of that image, because and once you're able to take control of the image, not ownership of the image, but control, you're able to work through whatever difficulties a job might have brought you personally.
So how many pieces do you have in this current show?
We're thinking that each of the three artists are going to do somewhere in the order of about 10 pieces.
10 pieces.
Which allows some room between to fully enjoy them in the space. So if you've been in the gallery, there's a west wing, an east wing, and then a center aisle. So everyone has their own space. And we'll be hanging that next week. We're very excited.
Have you been in the space yet, Robert?
I've seen a lot of the some on the internet, some interiors, but today I was gonna walk through and see the space, in person.
Well, it's a lovely space.
experience.
You're going to really love
Yeah,
it.
I'm excited.
You really are. So tell us about some of the things that we'll see. What do you primarily work in? Is it acrylic or
Watercolor.
Watercolor. Watercolor.
And I do oils. But a lot of it is, they're field books. They're finished pieces. Some take months to finish, and it might be, less than an 8x10. And then we'll work in oils, but I didn't bring any of the oils in, and then so a lot. It's various in size. These are more intimate sizes.
So when you say field book, you're talking about everywhere you go, you take a sketch pad
much,
with you,
yeah.
and something just grabs
Always.
you sketch it out, and then you go back in the studio later and
Sometimes.
turn that into an oil or a watercolor.
Sometimes, yeah, or I'll use them as compositions to build a representation of a certain space. So if I'm going to do a painting on this one place that I've been to for a couple of years, where I'm drawing, just details and people and crowds, and then I'll make not a collage, but I'll just make a composition from that.
Well, I wanted to tell us about the painting that's on the card that was sent out. It's an image of different people, different faces. I wonder if this is I don't know if you were sitting maybe at a little cafe and just saw a crowd of people, or what, or was this
No.
something a little?
This is more about the image control concept. So I took various images from my archive as a journalist, starting from Chechnya to Syria, and Bosnia's in there, I believe, and then obviously there's the tricolor flag, so of the German. So I created it in the studio using my archive as visual reference. This one. So this is a composition of photographs that I was wanting to exploit the theory of image control by hand.
Was it really nice to pick up a paintbrush again?
It was wonderful. I love. Yeah, it's just super. It's really.
So now you have more time to do it because you're settled in one place.
Yeah, and I've also figured out how to just do it to where it just becomes a part of not like breathing. I wish, but I just can carry it without making a scene.
Yeah.
So I'm able to not hide it, but I can. The sketchbooks are enough size to where I don't need an easel.
Right.
I can sit at a table and draw during my lunch break. All right, bring it to the office. But yeah, this being settled and having the job, it did help me, find the time to paint.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the other two artists' work too. That you were mentioning that Olga King showed at Crosstown, and you mentioned she was
Yeah.
primarily known for
Yeah.
her jewelry,
Yeah.
and she's now getting into painting. Tell us a little bit about what her work is like.
And she was telling me, we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, when she was a child in Russia, that she drew and had art lessons and got away from it when she started her jewelry business, which is really quite successful in Memphis. You'll see her work over at Palladio and other places. She enjoyed it very much because it's a creative process, but after a time, it's almost manufacturing. So she picked up the brush to have a more fluid creative process, if you will. And she does very figurative work. If you of course, we can't see the postcard on the radio, but it's up on artslat.com, and you can see 3 different sets of images that are figures. Robert's work, which is emotionally representative of his experience. Olga is very fluid. She has a palette of darker colors that really are infused with each other. And then Kristen is a very bright palette in a different kind of figures. So I'm intrigued by how that goes together. Olga has come so far. She's really decided she loves painting, and I push her to produce more. She sometimes dreads my calls, but people love it. I want to say we sold maybe 30% of everything that was on the wall at Crosstown, which is tremendous. She had many up. And Kristen, when I saw her in a student show a few years ago. I'm always looking at walls wherever I go. And she worked with a friend of mine, Brittany Vega, I had shown before at Crosstown. I got her at Tresvant with 2 other painters, and hers really, boom. Some sales, which I always like, of course. But when it hangs for a month or 2, as opposed to a pop-up, I do a lot of pop-ups every 2 days. Occasionally I have the opportunity to hang something for a month, and you get the feedback of people that go through it. I did a show at Church Health in our wellness center with Frank Bayer, and the patients would go by every day, and they would tell me what this art meant to them. And I would hear that with Christians at Tresvant, the lovely people that live there that walk past it every day. So it really has a tremendous amount of meaning. So I'm thrilled to have these 3 together. They're infused with meaning. It's going to be a great show. Don't miss the opening.
Well, the opening is 1 week from this Friday, January the 20th, from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Annesdale Park Gallery, and they're in Midtown on Peabody Avenue, right down a few houses down from Church Health. It's Transitory Triad Harmonic Alliance, curated by Ken Hall, featuring the works by Olga King, Kristen Rambo, and Robert King. Again, you can see that exhibit. Let's see, the hours are Tuesday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. or by appointment. And the show runs through February the 14th. And don't forget that a portion of the proceeds from sales will benefit Church Health. If you'd like more information, call 901-208-6451 or visit the website, theAnsdaleParkGallery.com. David Hasty with the Annesdale Park Gallery, the exhibit curated by Ken Hall, featuring work by Robert King. They have all joined me in the studio this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.